Many Roman emperors did not die of natural causes. That is a well-known historical fact, but now this has been studied by scientists, and a mathematical pattern has been found from it. This study was reported in Royal Society Open Science. Francisco Rodrigues, who is from the University of São Paulo in Brazil and a data scientist, said about this mathematical pattern, quote, "Although they appear to be random, power law distributions of probabilities are found in many other phenomena associated with complex systems." End of quote. Being a Roman emperor was at many times a high-risk job. This is likely because there were many people who wanted power, and being a Roman emperor gave one the role of one of the greatest empires in history. There were also people who disliked the emperor and how he governed. They wanted him gone and replaced with someone else. Once someone became emperor, they usually ruled for the rest of their life, so therefore the best way to end their reign was to end their life, and that was what often happened, especially when the emperor was unpopular and/or during unstable times. For details on this study, I will quote from ScienceNewsLab.com, quote, "According to Rodrigues, the power law distribution that generally defines the longevity of Roman emperors is called the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. The Pareto principle is usually concerned with economic inputs and outcomes, but in terms of probability distribution, it can be simplified to mean that common occurrences have about 80% probability, while rare events have about 20%. In this case, with regards to the fates of Roman emperors, violent ends are more common events, with deaths from natural causes being significantly rarer." End of quote. So the emperors from the first one, Augustus, to Theodosius, almost 400 years later, had a 24.8% chance of not dying a violent death, and instead dying a natural one. When they included the emperors of the Eastern Roman Empire, also called the Byzantine Empire, the number went up a bit, but only a little. When they took them into account, all 175 Roman emperors, it was found, had a 30% chance of not dying a violent death and dying a natural one. This study also found that at the beginning of an emperor's reign, there was a significant chance that they could be killed, but if they survived that time, the odds of them being killed went down. The odds would go up again at the 13th year of their reign if they reigned for that long. So from my knowledge of Roman history, and they also acknowledged in the study, that the risk often depended on which time period the emperor reigned. There were stable and unstable times in Roman history. Obviously, in unstable times, the risk went up, even though in more stable times, there was at least some risk. The emperors were also at least sometimes the cause of their own death or survival, at least indirectly. This was true usually during the more stable times, but usually did not apply to the unstable times. What I mean by the indirect cause of their own death or survival is that some were tyrants and made themselves unpopular, which caused many or some people to dislike and kill them. An example of this is Caligula and also Nero. Now, the opposite of that, emperors whose actions affected at least partially the fact that they survived and died of natural causes, sometimes happened as well. These emperors usually were benevolent and ruled well, at least for the most part or overall. If one were to look closely, they would find some bad things they did, but for the most part they ruled well, and there was usually peace and stability during their reigns, which also was why they did not die violently. An example of this is Augustus. There were some emperors who were for the most part good, but still died violently. Time period also affected an emperor's risk of being killed, which they acknowledged in this analysis. From the time of the first emperor, Augustus, to Marcus Aurelius, when most of the time there was peace and stability, many emperors did die from natural causes. Still, a fair amount did not, though they often were the bad emperors. After Marcus Aurelius, things became unstable, and that was when the beginning of the decline of the Roman Empire began. Emperors usually did not last very long after this, and usually died violently. There was often civil war to be emperor. Things would improve later on, and there were some emperors with mostly stable reigns like Constantine, but there was still often a lot of instability at many times. With all this, it is hardly shocking that the Roman Empire fell. What is surprising is the fact that it lasted so long. The Western Empire that had Rome as its capital fell in about the 6th century. When one looks at the Roman Empire, which was a powerful empire, they may think that this kind of thing with so many emperors dying violently would not happen, but it did. The Roman Empire, especially during its decline, seemed more like a third-world dictatorship rather than a great empire. So this analysis has shed more light on this topic, which gives us a better understanding of it. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe for more content like this.